My name is Jim Caseman, and we are doing a series on actually the life of the Casements. And as I said earlier, and for those of you who have not heard this, we're going to spend the first 29 years of my life kind of let people know as far back as I could remember, then and all the messy parts with alcoholism and drugs. And then after we got born again, and then all the supernatural things that happened during the ministry the next 49 years. So I'm doing this first part here about when I was dead spiritually, and believing that there might be some people that listen to it and say, hey, you know, if Jim Caseman can go through all of that and still end up getting born again and be in the ministry for, almost 50 years, there's hope for me too. And so that's what we're doing. So we left off talking about, of course, I was in high school and talked about that. And I did not mention the fact that kids might be interested to know, I did sing in a quartet in high school, and the first year of college, I sang tenor. And so I did a little bit of singing. I know, I just never felt comfortable singing, but my band instructor in high school had me on state competitions sing. What was that silly song? It's the name of some woman. I was so embarrassed, but anyway, I didn't have any career in music, that's for sure. But I did sing a little bit. All right, so then after I got out of high school, I'm 17 years old. And so, of course, working on the farm with Dad that summer. But then I joined the United States Army at age 17. My father signed for me because usually it's 18 years when you go in. You know, in those years it was the draft. You didn't have any choice. You would be drafted at 18. So I decided to join the North Dakota Army National Guard. They were 5th Army, and at age 17. So I went off for my 6 months of basic training, and I remember, going to the morning came when I had to leave my hometown, Wishick. Now, in those years, there was a train that went through that little town. And I remember the train depot where all that freight would be unloaded and all that sort of stuff. But Dad took me to the train, and I took this train to Bismarck, North Dakota, the capital city. And then from there, I caught another train to the West Coast to Fort Ord, California. And that would be, kind of like in between San Francisco and LA. And now this is a little farm boy who's never been out of, I don't know, see, this is an adventure for sure. And it was beautiful. Well, rode the train through the mountains and all that sort of stuff, which you don't have any mountains in North Dakota, so that was a real treat. And then we did get to Fort Ord, California. So I remember, there were other recruits, they were there. One of them in particular, I don't like this, I want to go home. And he called his dad, and his dad had to go talk to, to the senator, and all kinds of stuff did him out. But anyway, he was a sissy, I guess. But the other thing I remembered, we'd lay out there doing our things out there, and one of them, in the rifle range, and it would be raining. Rain. And so we'd be soaking wet. I'd never been so cold in my life. It wasn't that cold in the wintertime in North Dakota. So when I went home for Christmas, what a relief. Had a lot of snow, but it felt warm next to California in that wet rain. Anyway, we survived. We did very well. One thing that I did, I don't know, I found out that there were some night classes that you could take. And I took a rapid reading course while I was in basic training. And that's something I never regretted. That really helped me, for the rest of my life, really. And what else? Well, anyway, that was it. I went back home. And like I said, this was the National Guard. And the company in my hometown in Wishick was a dump truck company. Now remember, we're engineers now. We are combat engineers, 5th Army. So we had the dump truck company. Other battalions had all of the other heavy earth moving equipment and all that sort of stuff. But of course, if you ever were activated, all these units would come together as one, and you'd have all this equipment available for construction. All right, so that's how that happened. And I then in the summer of 1961, I did get a job as they called it a grunt, working for these power lines, that would be across the country. And the lineman would climb up the pole, and then with a pulley up there and a rope, and I had the bucket on the ground, whatever equipment they needed, I pulled it up with the bucket, and they were able to, get the parts they needed while they were up there. So that was my job that summer. And then in the fall of 1961, I attended the Ellendale State College in Ellendale, North Dakota. Now, they had some people come through while I was in high school to kind of try to evaluate you, to see what what you should do for a career. Well, the test showed that I would be an engineer. So I went to Ellendale and I took pre-engineering courses for that year. And what else? Of course, it was interesting. My dad's brother, there was 5 in his family too, and my dad was number 1, and Leopold was number 2. And apparently, in those years, people could, with just a high school diploma, basically, and another 6-week course or something, they could become teachers in these country schools. Well, apparently he needed to update his. So he ends up the first quarter or so, he's in going to college with me in Ellendale. Now, that was not really a good deal because he was a full-blown alcoholic. And of course, so we were drinking beer every night after school. That really didn't help my grades either. And so it wasn't a good deal, but it's the way it is. So I did make it through that first year. And then, of course, the summer of 1962, I must have been helping my father. I don't recall having a job outside of the farm. I just don't recall. But in 1962 then, I had a scholarship for the Jamestown College, so I decided to do my second year in Jamestown, North Dakota, in Jamestown College. And again, drinking was on the top of the list while I was going to college, and that didn't help my grades either. And that's the way it was. So then the last quarter at Jamestown College pretty much failed. The drinking just finally took its toll. But then I also had met at the guard unit there. I was still attending North Dakota Army National Guard drills, and I did some drills in Jamestown or either Valley City. That's just 40 miles away. I can't remember. But I met Ron Heinitz. He was an insurance salesman. So he introduced me into selling life insurance. So, so that was what was going on there. And so that was 62. 1963, my company commander talked me into going to an officer's candidate training school. Now, I was an enlisted man, and at this point, I was E5 sergeant. So I went to the officer's candidate school. I did pass the course. I ended up becoming a second lieutenant then in the guard unit that I was part of in Wishick, North Dakota. And then also, I had met another insurance salesman for Lutheran Brotherhood. And I went to work for, in 63, I started selling insurance for Lutheran Brotherhood. And I did that all the way up to February of 1964. Now here's where things really started to go downhill, and I see my time is up, and we'll talk about downhill next session. Be blessed. Amen.